could say that Galway minor hurling has been a bit of a hot topic over the last few weeks. I suppose just again with not getting accepted into the Leinster minor hurling championship. I presume, like we've seen Paul Bellew come out and he's been very frustrated, I suppose, by why there hasn't been a reason or anything given. I presume, like him and everyone involved in the Galway minor setup, you're a bit frustrated over that.
Yeah, it's just probably a little bit difficult to understand why we aren't accommodated in Leinster with all the other the seniors and 20s there, and then obviously with Kerry being invited in or being accepted into it there in the last week or two, you'd be scratching your head a little bit, so yeah, it's a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, I won't say we're used to it. This format is obviously only a few years old, so we're kind of just preparing away as it is. Like, that kind of stuff is still kind of out of our control, so there's nothing really I can do, or management or the players or anything like that. So yeah, look at Paul and Claude and Damien and the lads are doing all they can at the moment, and I think they're hoping to get a motion to Congress. If it gets discussed there, it might help as well. But we don't know. That Congress, I don't think, is until February. So yeah, it's a bit frustrating the way it is playing out, and nobody's really accepting any responsibility for this or can give any reasoning why Galway aren't in Leinster at under 17 level. Because all we want is games for the lads, and as many as possible. At the moment, all we're guaranteed is 2 games in the round robin, and that isn't until May. So our only window then to prepare and get games is obviously February and March. So for a team that's not playing championship until maybe mid-May, we have to kind of prepare the same as all these other counties in the provinces. Otherwise, we don't have a window for challenge matches. So it's a bit, it is difficult, but we're kind of, I suppose, the second year round, you'll always learn a little bit, and we're kind of preparing as if we are in a provincial competition, in that we're hoping to have a panel in place by mid-January, and we've a schedule of games in from the end in our beginning of February, and we'll try and approach those as if we're preparing for a provincial championship, and at least try and give them those games as development games as well as anything else. So that's all we can do at the moment, unless something changes between now and February. Highly unlikely, but hopefully, if there's enough noise made about it, and it can be rectified for the following season.
Just on that, Fergal, like you're talking there about 2 competitive games. You can obviously get so much out of challenge games, but they don't repeat what you could say is championship games.
No, absolutely not. Would say this year, I suppose we use a lot of those games. Like, we were playing games on Saturdays and Sundays with 2 different squads. So I suppose, at this age group, it takes maybe a year to get to know all these guys. When we came into it last December, we would have only been, cognizant of a handful of guys really. And you wouldn't have known a lot of them. Whereas now we would know, we'd be very familiar from even watching, the under-15s playing this year in their competition, the under-16s playing. So obviously them competitions weren't in play the previous year due to COVID, so. And then, all the school games that are happening at the moment as well, that they were all happening, I suppose, and Franny probably be more knowledgeable of this than I was, but for this year, a lot of them games happened, I think, from February and March, whereas now there's a lot of rounds of games played in junior and senior. So it's a great opportunity for us to go and see a lot of guys, and we're kind of having trials at the moment as well. So we'd be a good bit further down the line in our knowledge of all the younger players around at the moment. So we're probably in a better place to put a squad in place a little bit sooner and approach them games, with lads that are, fighting to make the 26, we'd say, from 30 to 35 guys. But you're right, yeah, ultimately they are only challenge matches, and you'd much prefer, we'd love to be going out at the end of March or early April and having 3 or 4 provincial games and see how that goes. And you could end up with maybe 7 or 8 games if you were to get to a semi-final or final. So we got to a semi-final last year playing 2 games, And our first game was against Clare, and they had, I think, something like 6 or 7 matches played at that stage. So then again, we might, they didn't perform that great that day, and it could have been a case where they had so many matches played, they were finding it hard to keep it going and keep their momentum going. But after we played they played us, they kind of rose it again, and they had a close semi-final with Offaly. Yeah, but ultimately it is a development age, and to improve players and improve them young guys, getting 7 or 8 games would be hugely beneficial to them as opposed to the current format.
Franny, you've obviously been involved at schools levels there, as Fergal was mentioning. Like, you can understand everyone's frustration, because I suppose with the way minor is at the minute, you're looking at 15, 16-year-olds and some lads even who are turning 17 later in the year. But when you're talking about like people that young, it's a very difficult situation to be in. And then there's this, I suppose, narrative being thrown around that Galway have been so successful at minor level, it'd be unfair on some of the other counties. But when you're mentioning how young they are, then you're just thinking, like, in what other sport would you have, I suppose, a county who ultimately plays two, like as Fergal mentioned there, 2 games last year?
Yeah, it's I suppose it's ridiculous, really. I go back to, I was involved with Matty Murphy. It's nearly 20 years ago now with the minors, and at that time, I suppose maybe at the time there wasn't as high a percentage of students taking TY, for example, but you were really looking at school senior teams and then picking the minor team from that. There would be the odd fella who was maybe overage for minor but still in school, but it was rare enough. Now that has it has completely changed with the very high percentage of students taking TY. So now a lot of people are doing their Leaving Cert at 19. So it's actually school junior teams we're looking at. So you combine that and the fact that minor is back to under 17, which is very young, which is another debate entirely. But I suppose from Fergal's point of view, you're trying to prepare a team to perform at an elite level. You're conscious that they're very young players, but there isn't a proper program of games for them to develop them. And I mean, the frustrating thing for me is looking at the bigger picture that, you go through the under 14, 15, 16 development squads and these, the competition structures. And I know they're more of the blitz variety or whatever way you want to call it, but they treat everyone equally. And if you have 2 teams, you can play your 2 teams and they get a level of competition and they get their match days and so on. And then you go to a year later at under 17, the whole thing is completely lopsided. And it's because of that old system, that's dominated by obviously the provincial councils. But I don't see at under 17 level why that has to be the case. It's just.
Do you feel that's where it could be opened up, like to?
Well, that would be my feeling on, and that's not to say that this is in my book, this is very much possible that you could actually have a national round robin and separately play your Leinster and Munster Championship as a knockout and have your Leinster and Munster champions go through to the All-Ireland Series, but that your back door into the All-Ireland Series is through how you've performed in the round robin. I think that's very doable. But the will has to be there to do it, and it just doesn't seem to be there at the moment. It seems that the only avenue is to get in through the Leinster Championship for Galway, and I would just like to see maybe a bit more open-mindedness in terms of some of these structures. I suppose it goes back to the senior provincial councils and having control over their own competitions and so on. But you'd like to see them maybe for underage think outside the box a little bit more.
And Franny, you obviously mentioned there being previously involved with Matty Murphy. You would have kind of been used to this system.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think a reason for this Galway not being led into championships is just because of the success they've had at minor grades in the past?
I think it's probably a factor. I'd say for some counties there is something of an insular approach towards it, and the monster that is Galway hurling going in and maybe impacting heavily on the Leinster Championship. There's probably a little bit of a fear there. And look, to be fair, if you're in a county suppose you always try and see both sides of it. I think if you're in a county who are trying to develop, and you know, if you take Offaly last year, Laois last year, you know, the progress they made, and you know, if they look at it and say, well, if Galway were in the Leinster Championship, would we have made that kind of progress with our team? So I just think sometimes the GAA has a responsibility to take an overall view and look at what's best for every county. And I'm not sure that's happening. I don't, you know, I think there was years as well where, and it probably still happens, that not enough is done for other developing counties. You know, the Kildares of this world who are putting in a massive effort to make progress. Is the structure helping them either, you know, to get a bit further up the ladder? And that's, you know, that's the disappointing thing, that I think there are great possibilities there. It's a fantastic age group in terms of that development work that's needed. And I think if a county wants to really put a focus on hurling and developing a group of players, they should be given every opportunity to do so. And I think there's just too much of the status quo in terms of competition structures. It nearly ensures that the strong will always be strong, Galway being the exception to that, I'd have to add.
Fergal, have you been able yourself to have conversations with Leinster GAA about this?
No, I'd be, in fairness I'd be talking to Paul and Claude fairly regularly, like, and they'd be giving us updates on where they are with things. But yeah, look at this. You know, I'd agree with what Franny was saying. It was probably an ideal age group and a good opportunity to open it up, and whether they wanted to keep your provincials or not, like, you know, it would be an ideal thing to have some sort of league format or to give it a go anyway. Like, but the fact that, like, we're in Leinster at the other levels and we're just not allowed in or not accepted in at this grade, I find it hard to get my head around that, like, you know. And it does seem to be a case where Croke Park are handing it over to Leinster Council, and Leinster Council are offloading it to the individual counties, and obviously Galway have no representation on the Leinster Council either, so they're missing from these meetings. So, you know, that probably doesn't help matters either. So look, it's one of those things that you would be scratching your head about in the GAA. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
Mm-hmm. It's like the old system, really, Fergal, isn't it? Like, once upon a time, the minors would just go ahead and prepare for an All-Ireland semi-final, and it's not much different for you now, really. You kind of have two shots at it, all right. That's probably the only difference. But you're playing seasoned teams who have been through a Leinster and Munster Championship, and you know, being ready to go first day is difficult. Yeah,
and if you look at, like, you know, we've done a lot of work on the likes of the Clares and Tips and Laois, you know, because we came across them last year, and, like, you know, even though their teams would have changed from their very first game to by the time they came out of the province, you know, they could have 5 or 6 changes, you know. So we got, you know, we got kind of 2 shots at it, and, you know, when you have a few injuries or guys, you know, we had a few jewel players this year as well. And there was a lot going on there as well. So trying to have the opportunity to even look at more guys as well is difficult. But the other side of it, I suppose, is, and I think we spoke about this before, Franny, was the fact that, you know, even though we're not out until May, we are still going to be training longer and playing longer than maybe some other teams that are going to get knocked out in the province. So again, you know, that's probably an advantage. The guys are going to be training at a fairly high level, and, you know, the in-house games, you know, you know, Galway minor hurlers you'll always have plenty of hurlers, because the clubs, the underage hurling in Galway is unbelievable, like, and the amount of work that the clubs are doing. And so I'm involved with under 8s and 9s and 10s there myself, like, and you're going around playing, you know, the Clare Bridges and the Turlocks and the Athenrys and Oran Moores and Michael Cusicks and these guys, Damien Hayes is Portumna, he's a group there, they're excellent. And the amount of work that's been done, and you'll always have that. So in Galway, I don't think you'll ever be short of hurlers. We'll always be competitive. And while we'll train up until whenever we do play in May, you know, and that's not bad. That's an advantage. But if we could have them 3 or 4 games, I've no doubt, you know, if we're good enough, you'll be hurling till the end of June, early July, like, I think whenever the final is, you know. But in order to get to the latter stages now, the way it is, you know, we are at a disadvantage, and you kind of have to be really peaking for them couple of games. So, which is obviously, it's a bit tricky, like when you don't get something to build up to it, like, so yeah, there is, it is difficult. But, again, this is something that's outside of my control, and we can only obviously just prepare as well as we can and hope things change. Whether they change in February or not, it's highly unlikely, but we're prepared. At the moment, we're preparing for literally a May championship game.
Yeah, I would always have said that, Fergal. I think we did speak about that before, that the big advantage that we always had in Galway going back over the minor teams over many years is that we always trained right through the summer, because we were in the past getting ready for an All-Ireland semi-final in August. Some minors were gone out of their championship in April or May and didn't get that opportunity. I think it was our own kind of development phase for Galway hurlers, that we always got that. We always got a summer of hurling for our minor players. But I think what's happening is that maybe some of that development work is going on in other counties, and now our problem is that if we don't get the matches now to back up the work that's being done in the clubs and being done with the squads, it's difficult to keep bringing lads through at the level, and the level is so high nowadays.
And you see, a measure of success really, I think, at under 17 has to be how many players you get through to the next level, as opposed to, winning cups. Ultimately, like we've all, we've won them ourselves. We've played with guys at our age groups up along at underage, and for whatever reason, a lot of them, But I think even when you look back to the 90s, whatever it was, we seem to be able to get a few more players out of those minor teams to senior level. In the last 10 years, 15 years, it seems very difficult. Like, we've put a huge focus on the athletic development now, and with Lucas, in fairness, and he's helping us drive it, and we're getting great support from Paul and Claude and the lads on that. Like, so, we've 70 guys in there doing athletic development since September, like, and that's this year's squad, and that covers a lot of under 15s, under 16s. And we're trying to be conscious of, getting these guys to under, or if it stays at under 20 for the follow-on for 2024, you're trying to get them to that point where they're physically able to step up and match the pace and the strength and the physicalness of, we'll say, what under 20 will have become. And even at that stage, if you look at club hurling now, like the amount of work that's been done for, the adult teams in any club, there's no club not using, a gym. A gym is part and parcel of it now. That's the culture, I suppose. And we're cognizant of trying to educate the guys that this has to be part of their prep. Like, so this is all new to these guys. A lot of these guys are coming in at 15, 16, 17, and all they've ever done is hurl. And like, that's all we ever did as well when we were this age. We never were ever subject to anything like this, And look, there's positives and negatives to it, I think, as well. Every young lad wants to hurl. Not every young lad wants to go to a gym. But unfortunately, now you're not going to make it at senior level if you don't, like, unless you're really exceptional talent and you've got size and you have that natural strength, because there's so much focus on it now, so yeah, we'd be very conscious of trying to physically develop them as much as mentally develop them. And then obviously from a hurling point of view, again, I think a measure of the success has to be how many we get through. Same for the 20s. How many lads can come off Brian's under 20s and be ready to step into Henry's panel without needing maybe another 18 months of work before they're ready to step out in a pitch at that level. So that's, and the way the game has gone, it's probably a younger man's game now, and you're trying to get them ready, in every aspect to be sooner rather than later, really. And that's kind of probably been our issue in Galway, I think, for a number of years now.
Franny, it's a really interesting issue Fergal brings up there. It's been well documented by everyone. Galway having successful minor teams, but maybe some of them not transferring to senior. Do you feel maybe, like Fergal was mentioning there, athletic development, is that nearly part of the reason why in the past maybe we haven't seen as many minors transfer into the seniors?
To be honest with you, I never really connected the two, because even going back to my own time, and that's a long time ago now, like, we wouldn't want a minor, but I would have felt that a lot of the minors we won over the years were actually down to what Fergal said there earlier, the amount of work that's gone on in clubs and the number of quality players we bring through, that Galway minor teams going back for years have always been so balanced. You know, every single one of the lads who's on a Galway minor team is well able to hurl, and they're not there for, you know, they're not there because of their size or their strength. It's because they have, you know, pretty much the full package at that age. But I think what we've had in Galway over a long number of years is a lot of very good hurlers. And if you're going to win All Ireland at senior level, you know, what you need is a few great ones that really make the difference. Like the current Limerick team that has come along, there's a number of exceptional hurlers in that. And they've just, you know, the Keane Lynches of this world, the Gillans, that have that extra little bit. I think if you look at our club championship at senior level, there's a lot of really good hurlers in every single club. But no more than watching the World Cup, it's the lads with that extra little bit of class, you know, the Messis of this world, the Mbappes, they still have that 1 or 2% extra. And to win All Ireland senior titles, you need just a few of those guys that can get you that extra little bit. And I don't think that correlates in any way to what happens at minor level, to be honest with you. I think we've won minors because we've had a lot of really good players. Under 20, under 21 has proved more of a struggle, to be honest. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. That's something maybe that we need to look at as a county, as that stepping stone in terms of bringing lads through. But again, I'm not sure that winning those is the key either. I think it's just to keep doing that developmental work. I think we're doing an awful lot right. But sometimes you just need the timing to be right and the few great players to come along at the right time.
If you take the Thomas's lads, you take players throughout this club championship, like even the likes of like Sean Loftus from Turlockmore this year, putting his hand back up to get back in there, Martin McManus, Mark Kennedy. They're just some players, to name a few, but like there has been loads of players that have definitely put their hand up to get called into Henry Shefflin setup now.
There is, yeah, and you've named a good few of them there, and I think they have a fairly big squad in there at the moment, from what I gather. So, yeah, hopefully, I'm sure you'd see a good few of these guys now in the Walsh Cup and during the league, and yeah, hopefully for Galway's sake, and just if you maybe can add 4 or 5 lads to the squad and increase the quality there, and have a couple other guys pushing for the 15. That's what you want, and I'm sure if Henry can come out of the league with 4 or 5 new guys added to his panel, he'd be very happy with that.
Franny, you're someone now who's looking on at these Galway players as the rival.
I have a different perspective all of a sudden. Yeah, but look, you know, I suppose no matter what county you're in, it's. I think if you go back to maybe Cody's philosophy in Kilkenny over a long number of years, it's what he would have looked for primarily is lads who put their hand up in club championship and lads who are leaders for their club. I think that's number one, and I suppose lads that really put their shoulder to their wheel for their club in what is a very tough club championship here in Galway, and a very competitive club championship. And if you have lads that have done that consistently over 3 or 4 games in a club championship season, that entitles them to definitely a shot at it. And then once you're in there, I suppose, and Fergal would agree with me on this, that you find sometimes that some lads who might have come in a little bit, or you might say were lucky enough maybe to get in the first place, they might just grow into it, and that actually county hurling and all that goes with that really suits them, because it's very much a lifestyle choice. And you get other fellas maybe who shoot the lights out in championship or in club championship or whatever, and for whatever reason struggle to make the same impact at that higher level, where, you know, they're being marked by top guys every day or whatever it might be, or, you know, play really well for their club and just struggle to make that same impact at inter-county level. But you only find that out when you get them in there in front of you and you see them in these league games and so on, and see who's going to step up to it. And, you know, sometimes, we've spoken about this earlier, some lads take a little bit longer than others for, you know, for that, I suppose, that growth in their game to come, or to learn the ropes of the extra bits that are needed for intercounty and to make it at that level.
How have you found, I suppose, it's still early in the year, Franny, but I suppose being involved with Dublin, how have you found it so far?
Well, for myself, the biggest thing for me has been kind of getting back on the pitch and you know, doing more coaching, which I probably wouldn't have done to the same extent since Galway 2019 or whatever. I was involved with the club, obviously, but that was, and there is a fair difference between management and coaching from that point of view. So nice to get back on the pitch. I suppose Dublin, what we're looking at the moment is a very big squad. You're calling in a lot of players, and you want to get a look at as many as possible in the Walsh Cup. But you know, enjoying it so far. Nice to, I suppose, be back in with Micheál and Noel in particular, because we would have a very good working relationship, obviously, and that element has definitely been enjoyable. There'd be times you'd be obviously a little bit torn and so on. You might on occasion prefer to be tipping down the road to Lough George than up to Dublin, but look, that's you know, you can't choose the time or whatever, and it's not often maybe these opportunities come along. So we said we'd jump at it and see where it takes us.
Is it a bit different, like culturally wise, like from the players you managed at Galway? A lot of them coming from rural Galway, and then I suppose from Dublin you have a large proportion of the hurlers being Southsiders. Is that something that's taking a bit of getting used to?
No, not really, to be honest. Not really. I've the very first impression, you know, and that's it's not a secret or anything like that, but for very first impression of the lads, that they were very genuine, down to earth lads who just want to get the best out of themselves, number one, and try and step up to intercounty hurling, I suppose. But no, funnily enough, when you're in a dressing room, you're in that environment, and you get in amongst them, you know, they're really good bunch of lads who just want to do their best. And I think no matter where you come from, if you carry a good attitude into the dressing room, it leads for a good environment, and that's certainly been very happy with what we've seen from that point of view so far. But as I said, yeah, it is early days, and there's a long road ahead.
Set up nicely in Parnell Park for the last round of the Leinster Championship. Galway Dublin this week.
Well, if you want to talk to me about last rounds of Leinster Championship in Parnell Park, it brings only bad memories, Paul, unfortunately. But look, you know, that's I suppose that's in the past. Yeah, it'll be interesting times. You know, it's I suppose we'll probably be a bit torn that day, no matter what way you go about it. But I suppose if you sign up to something, you just have to go and do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's one we could all be keeping an eye on in the next few months. But that's all on our show for today. Big thanks to Franny and Fergal for coming on.
No problem, Paul.